I still remember the day I moved into my college dorm room. The air was thick with anticipation, a mix of excitement and anxiety that comes with new beginnings. The hallways buzzed with activity, parents helping their kids move in, roommates meeting for the first time, and the occasional sound of a door slamming shut as another family said their goodbyes. I stood in the doorway of what would be my home for the next year, taking in the sight of the twin beds, identical desks, and bare walls waiting to be filled with posters and memories. That's when I met Tyler. He walked in carrying a box labeled gaming stuff and wearing a faded baseball cap turned backward. His smile was immediate and genuine as he introduced himself. "Hey, I'm Tyler. Looks like we're roommates." He extended his hand, and I shook it, introducing myself as Alex. I couldn't help but notice his firm handshake and the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. First impressions matter, and Tyler seemed like the quintessential all-American guy, athletic, friendly, and undeniably straight. In those first few weeks, we fell into an easy rhythm. We discovered shared interests in video games, a mutual love for late-night pizza, and similar taste in music. Despite our different backgrounds, me from a progressive city on the coast and him from a small town in the Midwest, we found common ground easily. I had come out in high school and was comfortable with my sexuality, but I didn't immediately tell Tyler. Not because I was hiding it, but because it just didn't come up naturally in conversation. Let me explain why this matters. College is often the first time many people encounter diversity in a meaningful way. For someone like Tyler, who grew up in a homogeneous community where everyone looked, thought, and loved the same way, I might have been the first openly gay person he'd ever really gotten to know. These encounters can either reinforce stereotypes or break them down, depending on how they unfold. About a month into the semester, Tyler and I were hanging out in our room when he noticed a text on my phone from a guy I'd been seeing. The name had a heart emoji next to it. Subtle, I know. Tyler raised an eyebrow, but didn't say anything right away. Later that night, as we were playing video games, he casually asked, "So, are you know?" I appreciated his attempt at discretion, even if it was awkward. "Gay?" "Yeah," I replied, keeping my eyes on the screen. There was a brief pause, and then he just nodded and said, "Cool." And that was it. No big reaction, no uncomfortable questions, just acceptance. Over the next few months, our friendship deepened. We'd stay up late talking about classes, family, and future plans. Tyler would tell me about the girls he was interested in, and I'd offer advice from a different perspective. Sometimes he'd ask questions about my experiences, always respectful but genuinely curious. I could tell he was trying to understand a world that was unfamiliar to him. One night stands out in my memory more than others. We were both studying for midterms, fueled by energy drinks and determination. It was around 2 a.m. when Tyler suddenly put down his textbook and looked at me with a serious expression. "Can I ask you something?" he said, his voice hesitant. I nodded, assuming it would be another question about my coming out experience or dating life. Instead, he asked something that caught me completely off guard. "What do boys taste like?" The question hung in the air between us. I wasn't sure if I had heard him correctly at first. "What do you mean?" I asked, giving him a chance to clarify or backtrack if he wanted to. But Tyler, in his straightforward way, just shrugged and said, "I mean, when you kiss them, is it different from kissing girls? I've always wondered." In that moment, I realized that his question wasn't coming from a place of judgment or mockery. It was pure curiosity, the kind that emerges when someone feels safe enough to explore thoughts they might otherwise keep to themselves. Tyler had grown comfortable enough with me to ask questions he probably wouldn't ask anyone else. I took a moment to consider my answer. "How do you describe something as subjective and personal as a kiss?" "Well," I started, "everyone's different, you know. But in general, guys tend to be more assertive when they kiss. There's often more pressure, more intensity." I paused, trying to find the right words. "And yes, there are physical differences, stubble for one thing, which can be rough or surprisingly soft depending on the person." Tyler nodded thoughtfully, absorbing this information like he was studying for an exam. "What about everything else?" he asked, his cheeks flushing slightly. I couldn't help but laugh at his embarrassment. "Are you asking for a detailed report on my sex life?" I teased. He laughed too, the tension breaking. "No, man. I'm just curious. We always hear about what girls like, what works with them. But nobody ever talks about guys with guys." This conversation opened the door to many more. Over the following weeks, Tyler would occasionally ask questions about my experiences, my perspective on relationships, and the challenges of navigating a world that wasn't always accepting. I shared stories of my first crush, my awkward coming out to my parents, and the relief of finally being able to live authentically. These weren't just educational moments for Tyler. They were healing for me too. There's something powerful about sharing your truth with someone who genuinely wants to understand. One night, after a party where Tyler had struck out with a girl he'd been interested in, we were walking back to our dorm when he asked, "How do you know if someone's into you?" Like other guys. I explained the subtle signs, the lingering glances, the excuses to make physical contact. Not so different from what happens between men and women, just often more coded, more careful. It's like a secret language sometimes, I told him. You learn to read between the lines because being wrong can have consequences. Tyler was quiet for a moment. That sounds exhausting, he finally said. I nodded, appreciating his empathy. It can be, but it gets easier with time. And things are changing. It's not as dangerous as it used to be, at least not everywhere. This was a revelation for Tyler, who had never had to consider the potential risks of expressing attraction. Our conversations weren't always serious. Sometimes they were lighthearted, even funny. Like when Tyler asked if gay men really had impeccable fashion sense, and I had to gesture to my own outfit, sweatpants, and a faded t-shirt, as evidence to the contrary. Some stereotypes are just that, stereotypes, I explained through laughter. Gay men are just as diverse as straight men in their interests, personalities, and yes, fashion choices. As the semester progressed, I noticed changes in Tyler. He became more mindful of his language, catching himself when he almost said something was gay to mean stupid or uncool. He started calling out his friends when they made homophobic jokes. And he became more reflective about masculinity itself, questioning why certain behaviors or interests were considered manly while others weren't. One day, Tyler came back from a sociology class particularly fired up. We were discussing gender roles, he explained, pacing around our small room. And I realized how much pressure I felt my whole life to fit into this narrow definition of what a man should be. It's like I've been in this box, and I never even questioned it. I sat on my bed, watching this awakening with a mixture of pride and amusement. Welcome to the conversation, I said. Some of us have been having it for years. The turning point in our friendship came unexpectedly. We were at a house party, the kind with red Solo cups and music too loud for conversation. Tyler had been talking to a girl for most of the night, but she eventually left with someone else. He came over to where I was chatting with some friends from my literature class, including a guy named James who I knew was gay but hadn't really connected with. As the night wore on, I noticed Tyler and James deep in conversation. They seemed to be getting along well, laughing and leaning in close to hear each other over the music. Later, as we walked home, Tyler was unusually quiet. Finally, he said, "James is a cool guy." I agreed, waiting to see where this was going. He asked if I was gay. Tyler continued. When I said no, he looked surprised. Said he got a vibe from me. I glanced at Tyler, trying to gauge his reaction. Did that bother you? I asked carefully. Tyler thought for a moment, then shook his head. Actually, no. It was kind of flattering. Is that weird? I smiled, relieved. Not weird at all. A compliment is a compliment, right? Tyler nodded, then added, "It made me think, though, about how I've always just assumed I'm straight because that's what everyone expected. I've never really questioned it." This moment marked a shift in our conversations. Tyler began to explore his own sexuality in a way he never had before. Not because he was suddenly questioning if he was gay, but because he was questioning the rigid categories he'd always accepted without thought. It's like I've been seeing in black and white, and now there's all these shades of gray, he told me one night as we shared a pizza in our room. I explained the concept of the Kinsey scale, the idea that sexuality exists on a spectrum rather than in binary categories. Most people aren't 100% straight or 100% gay, I said. There's a whole range of experiences in between. Tyler listened intently, nodding occasionally. That makes sense, he said finally. I can recognize when a guy is attractive, even if I don't want to sleep with him. That doesn't make me less straight, right? Labels are just tools, I told him. They're useful when they help you understand yourself better, but harmful when they become prisons. What matters is being honest with yourself about what you feel. Tyler seemed to find comfort in this perspective, a freedom he hadn't allowed himself before. As the year progressed, our room became a space of open dialogue and mutual growth. Tyler taught me about growing up in a small town, about the pressure to conform, about the complexity of breaking away from the expectations of family and community. I taught him about the LGBTQ+ community, about the history of struggle and resilience, about the joy of finding your people after feeling like an outsider. We had our disagreements too. Tyler sometimes struggled to understand concepts like privilege or the importance of pronouns. I occasionally grew frustrated with having to explain basic aspects of my experience. But we always came back to a place of respect and willingness to learn from each other. The most profound moment of our friendship came near the end of the school year. Tyler had been dating a girl named Emma for a few months, and things were getting serious. One evening, he came back from a date looking troubled. When I asked what was wrong, he sat heavily on his bed and sighed. Emma and I were talking about our relationship, where it's going. She asked about my past, my experiences. He paused, looking uncomfortable. I told her about our conversations, about how you've helped me understand myself better. And she got weird about it. Said it was strange that I was so interested in gay stuff. I felt a pang of concern. Would this drive a wedge between us? But Tyler continued. I told her she was wrong. That learning about your experiences hasn't made me question my sexuality. It's made me question my prejudices. It's made me a better person. He looked up at me, his expression earnest. I told her if she had a problem with that, maybe we weren't right for each other. I was speechless for a moment, moved by his defense of our friendship. Thank you. I finally managed. Tyler shrugged, but I could tell he was emotional too. You've taught me more than any class this year, he said simply. As the semester ended and we prepared to move out for the summer, Tyler and I reflected on our year together. Remember when I asked what boys taste like? He said, laughing at the memory. God, that was so awkward. I laughed too. It was a good question though, I told him. It started something important. Tyler nodded thoughtfully. You know, I've been thinking about that conversation a lot. Not because I suddenly want to kiss guys, but because it made me realize how much I didn't know, how much I hadn't even thought to ask. He paused, then added, my dad always taught me that being a man meant having all the answers. But maybe being a man, being a person, is about having the courage to ask questions instead. On our last night as roommates, we stayed up late talking about the future. Tyler was planning to study abroad the following semester, eager to experience new cultures and perspectives. I was considering a leadership role in the campus LGBTQ+ organization, inspired by our conversations to help create more bridges of understanding. Do you think we would have been friends if we hadn't been randomly assigned as roommates? Tyler asked as we packed our belongings. I considered the question. Honestly, probably not. We moved in different circles. We probably would have passed each other on campus for 4 years and never spoken. The thought made me sad. How many potential connections do we miss because of the invisible barriers we place between ourselves and others? Tyler nodded in agreement. I'm glad the housing office algorithm put us together, he said, even if it was just random chance. But I wasn't so sure it was entirely random. Sometimes the universe has a way of bringing together the people who need each other most, the ones who can help each other grow in unexpected ways. As we said goodbye the next day, promising to stay in touch and reunite in the fall, I reflected on the journey we'd shared. It had started with a simple, awkward question, what do boys taste like? But it had led to so much more. It had led to a friendship that transcended differences, to conversations that challenged assumptions, to growth that neither of us could have anticipated. The story of Tyler and me isn't extraordinary in its events. We didn't fall in love. He didn't discover he was secretly gay all along. There was no dramatic coming out or heartbreaking rejection. Instead, it was a story of ordinary human connection, of curiosity met with honesty, of questions asked and answered with respect, of two people allowing themselves to see the world through each other's eyes. In a society that often seems increasingly polarized, where people retreat into echo chambers of like-minded individuals, there's something revolutionary about these simple connections. About a straight guy from a small town and a gay guy from the city finding common ground in a college dorm room. About the power of asking questions and really listening to the answers. As I drove away from campus that day, I thought about all the Tylers out there. People who might never have had a close relationship with someone from the LGBTQ+ community, who might be carrying misconceptions or stereotypes simply because they've never had the opportunity to learn otherwise. And I thought about all the people like me, who sometimes grow weary of explaining their existence, who sometimes forget that not everyone has had the same opportunities to learn and understand. The bridge between these worlds isn't built through grand gestures or political movements, though those have their place. It's built through countless small moments of vulnerability and courage, through late-night conversations and awkward questions, through laughter and occasional discomfort, through the willingness to see each other as fully human. So if there's a lesson in our story, perhaps it's this: be curious. Ask questions, even when they make you blush. Listen to the answers with an open heart. Allow yourself to be changed by what you learn. And remember that sometimes the most important connections in our lives begin with the simplest of questions, even one as unexpected as, what do boys taste like? In the years since that freshman year, Tyler and I have remained friends. He did study abroad and came back with even broader perspectives. I took that leadership role and found my voice as an advocate. We've both grown in ways we couldn't have predicted that first day we met in our dorm room. And though our paths have diverged in many ways, we still check in regularly, still reminisce about that year that changed us both. The last time we met up, over coffee during a holiday break, Tyler told me he'd been thinking about our story. You know, he said, I've told so many people about our conversations that year, about how much they taught me. He paused, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. I think everyone needs a friendship that challenges them, that makes them question what they think they know. I couldn't agree more. In a world that often tries to divide us into neat categories, straight and gay, liberal and conservative, us and them, these boundary-crossing friendships are more important than ever. They remind us of our shared humanity, of the possibility of connection across difference, of the growth that awaits when we step outside our comfort zones. So here's to the Tylers of the world, with their awkward questions and open hearts. And here's to everyone brave enough to answer honestly, to share their truth with someone trying to understand. These conversations may seem small in the moment, but their ripples can extend far beyond what we imagine, changing minds, opening hearts, and building bridges where walls once stood. Total _char_count, 18,567.